We had just finished tidying up after dinner when she caught my attention, causing my heart to skip a beat. "Sweetheart, could you please bring us a couple of drinks and join me in the living room? There's something important we need to discuss." The elongated and somewhat formal version of "we need to talk" didn't exactly fill me with anticipation for this conversation, but I dutifully complied with her request. Mary and I had been in a relationship for nearly 2 years, and we were set to tie the knot next Saturday, precisely 1 week away. Our cohabitation had been going smoothly, and our intimate life was thriving ever since we started dating, about 2 months into our relationship. I had full confidence in our bond and our impending marriage, so I couldn't help but wonder what she had on her mind. As we settled onto the couch and took tentative sips of our drinks, it was evident that Mary was struggling to broach the topic. Sensing her hesitation, I decided to offer some encouragement. "Mary, are you thinking of leaving me?" Her reaction was one of sheer horror. "Goodness, no, Henry. I adore you and envision spending the rest of my days by your side, eagerly awaiting our marriage." "It's nothing like that." "Then what is it, darling? You know you can talk to me about anything without fear." "I know, my dear. It's just... Well, this is a conversation I've been contemplating for years, yet finding the right words is still a challenge." I reached for her hand, planting a tender kiss on its back. "Whatever it may be, we'll face it together, all right?" Mary turned and smiled at me, then obviously just decided there was nothing left to do but say it. "Henry, baby, you know how close my family is and how much they love you." I knew it. My family loved each other, of course, but Mary's family, if it could be appreciated, would be much higher. "Of course, baby, and you know how much I love them." "I know. I've already told you how important this is to me, and your relationship with them has surpassed even what I hoped for. But since our wedding is a week away, there is one last thing that needs to be done. Perhaps we can say that this is a family tradition. This is what my family has been doing for generations to bring the family together whenever a marriage occurs. We feel that this makes a new member of the family, well, a closer part of it." "Well, that doesn't sound so bad. You know, of course, that we talked about me staying with my parents starting tonight, and you won't see me until I walk down the aisle with Dad on the wedding day. Well, you're going to spend the Friday night before the wedding with my mom." I really liked Mary's mom, and as they say, if you want to know what a woman will look like when she gets older, then look at her mother. Well, let's just say I was pleased with the expected result. "Oh, that's interesting. So your mom and I are going to go out to dinner, spend time talking, and really get to know each other? Something like that?" "Well, I'm sure dinner and conversation will be part of it, but it's not really the tradition. I was talking about you and Mom. We'll get to know each other very well, Mary. Please, can you just say what you mean?" She took a deep breath to calm herself and then looked straight in the eye. "Henry, you're going to spend Friday night doing this with my mom?" Of all the things I could think of, it wasn't even on the list. And I think the evidence was quite noticeable from the expression on my face. "You're not. Are you not serious?" "I'm completely serious, my love. As I said, my family believes that the closeness between the future husband and the opposite parent creates an unbreakable bond and really brings this person into the family. As I said, this has been going on in our family for generations." "You mean your father did this to Grandma Agnes?" "As a champion, judging by what Grandma says about it. And yes, Grandpa Frank did it to Alice's great-grandmother, and so on, through generations of people you haven't even heard of, let alone met. You've already mentioned how well Dad and Grandma get along. Well, now you know why. And husbands too, I mean your father. He's like that. Is everything all right with him?" "Look, baby, you don't have to decide right now," she said, avoiding my question. "The time I spend with my parents this week will give you time to think about it. Just remember how important it is. You can say no if you want, but that means we won't be able to get married and we'll have to break up." I was really starting to lose my mind. An hour ago, I was blissfully waiting for my wedding day to approach, eager to connect with the best woman I have ever known, with whom I would like to spend my life. And now, suddenly, I was told that if I did not agree to something that, on first impression, I consider morally unacceptable, then not only would my wedding be cancelled, but I would completely lose this woman. Suddenly, my lunch was unhappy with its current placement. I jumped off the couch without saying a word and just ran to the toilet. Fortunately, the apartment is not very big. Before his presence made itself felt, I stayed there until there was nothing left but air, and my abdominal muscles rebelled. Mary was right behind me when I finally felt confident enough to turn away from the porcelain god and finish the prayer, sitting on the floor right next to him just in case. "Are you okay, baby?" I looked at her as if she had suddenly grown green heads on both sides of her neck. "No, Mary, I'm not okay. I've just been told that I have to do something that I find morally questionable at best, or I'll lose the love of my life forever. Isn't there some kind of freedom of action in your tradition? Some kind of position for a man who loves you with all his heart and soul but doesn't feel comfortable with what you're asking for?" "No, dear. I'm sorry, Mom was actually engaged to someone before she met Dad, and he didn't want to do it," said. "He thought it was wrong. She left him that day and never spoke to him again. But you can break the cycle, Mary. We can just fly to Vegas and get married there." Suddenly, judging by Mary's look, those green alien heads had just grown out of my neck. "Henry, you surprise me. I would never disrespect my parents. In fact, I'd shame my entire family by doing something like that. And if you think I'm going to do it, you don't know me at all." Of course, I knew this, and if I hadn't been in such an emotional state, I wouldn't even have suggested it. Mary would never go against something that her family considered so important. I tried to apologize. "It's all right, darling. I know it was a real shock. That's why I told you. Now you have a week to think about what you want to do." Suddenly, a thought occurred to me. "My God, Mary, if I somehow agree to this, and then we'll have a daughter, then you will." I definitely discussed this with our future son-in-law. "Yes, Henry, that's part of it too. But if we have a son, then all the responsibility will fall on you." The thought flashed through my mind that the continuous succession of daughters born into this family would not allow this. "Mary, this is too much. I don't think I can do it." She climbed into my lap while I was sitting on the bathroom floor. She wrapped her arms around my neck and pressed her head against mine. "Henry, my love, you are the strongest man I know," here she said, patting my chest. "I would trust you with my life because I know that you have the strength to do what needs to be done for me and for us. I love you with everything I have, but it has to be a decision you make. I'm going to pack my things for the week, and I have full confidence that you and I will stand at the altar together on Saturday and get married and all that that implies. Mary, I couldn't think of anything to say." When she got up and I stayed on the bathroom floor while Mary packed her things, I was completely numb and lost track of time, but at least I didn't throw up again. She knelt in front of me and took my hands in hers. She looked at me with sincere love. I knew that she loved me and that the thought of this coming between us also hurt her, but I knew her well enough to know that she wouldn't give in to it. "When you make a decision, just call my parents' house. This will be the last time I see you before our wedding. You need to either invite my mom to Friday night or ask her to return your rings. I know that you will make the right choice. Do you want me to help you up, baby?" "No, I think I'll just sit here for a while, just in case." She kissed me on the forehead and left the apartment. That night, I slept on the couch for some reason, not wanting to be in bed without Mary. It was like if I wasn't sleeping there alone, then I could pretend that Mary was there and that the whole nightmare just didn't happen. Of course, it didn't work. The next morning, I woke up as lonely as I had been the night before, and emotionally, probably even more lonely. The thought of breakfast almost made me vomit dry again, so I just went for a walk. The fresh air seemed to help. I thought over the scenario I was facing again. The only thing I could think about was how wrong it all seemed. But I had nowhere else to turn for another perspective. My very conservative parents would be furious at the very idea and would probably demand that I cut off all contact with Mary and her family so that I could not discuss it with them. And the rest of my extended family was no better. At some point, I realized that there was actually only one person, someone who had been through this himself, who could perhaps give me some point of view on this. It would be awkward for me to bring up this conversation since we will talk about how I'm doing this with his wife, but I didn't see any other choice. Because if I couldn't somehow realize this, I would have demanded my rings back, and I really didn't want that yet. I went back to the apartment and dialed the number. "Henry, my boy, I was wondering how long it would take you to call after that little bomb my daughter dropped on you yesterday. I suppose you need to talk?" "Yes, sir. Will you be free at some point today? Let's meet at Clan's Pub around 6:30. We'll have a beer, eat, and discuss everything." "Thank you, sir." The day seemed to creep on, but finally, it was approaching 6:30. I arrived 5 minutes early and found Mary's father already waiting in the back booth, which would allow us some privacy. I walked over and sat down. "Thank you for taking the time to meet with me, Sir Henry. We've known each other for a couple of years. I think you can drop the sir part. It's Joe, or even Dad if you want, but not sir. And I've been waiting for your call, although it took you longer than I expected." I was pretty stunned by what Mary said. "Joe, I'm sorry, but calling you Dad seems a little premature right now." "So, you're going to break up with Mary?" I considered almost everything, including registering in a local monastery and dedicating my life to God. From what my daughter said, it would be a great shame to exclude you from the male population, if you understand what I mean. So, I hope that you will exclude this option. I shook my head at the thought of Mary sharing information about our personal lives with her parents, or rather with her father. He noticed. "I'm sorry, Henry, but we're pretty open about these things. It's not such a big deal if everyone acts openly. So, what can I tell you, my boy? I think my first question is, how do you feel about this, Henry? I'd be lying if I told you that the idea of a manly young man doing this to my wife is something that makes me happy. I'm guessing I'll spend the night heavily under the influence of something and then sleep it off at a nearby hotel. But I knew what I was doing. When I agreed to it and did it with Agnes 24 years ago, and I will contribute to the family, did you ever, think about it when your wife was pregnant and hoped it would be a boy? Of course, yes. Not because I imagined what beauty my son could bring home. How did you decide to go through with it? I mean, I've always been taught that being in a committed relationship, even if you're not actually married, means that this person is the only one you're close to. I understand that in this case, everyone knows what is going on and has given their approval, but I am still in conflict with what I was taught, and only you can decide how you're going to apply these things in your life, Henry. For better or worse, we are all brought up the way our parents see fit, but once we reach adulthood, we have to evaluate these life lessons and decide if we agree with them. I understand your point of view. Just because I was raised that way doesn't mean I have to believe in it. That's exactly it. You're an adult now, Henry, and you have to decide what's right for you personally. It's part of free will, but the fact is that in your mind, what is being proposed is wrong and it will be difficult to overcome. Let's pretend for a moment that you have no moral objection to being intimate with a woman other than Mary. What else in this situation bothers you? Well, the first thing that comes to mind is, well, sir, I mean Joe. I paused and took a deep breath. My first thought is, how will I look you in the face, for example? Would it be awkward, considering that I had a bed with your wife, and you know about it? A wide smile appeared on Joe's face, and a puzzled expression appeared on mine. Henry, that was the first thing that came to my mind. How am I going to stand at the altar and look into the face of Frank, whose wife I would have just spent the night with, when he walks Millie down the aisle? Not to mention for the rest of my life. So, I called him, just like you. Called me. I told you I was waiting for your call. He did just that. The more things change, the more they stay the same, as they say. I think this scenario is played out almost every time. What kind of man, after learning that he has to do this with his future mother-in-law with full knowledge of the family, will not have any problems with this? Calling the man whose wife you're going to be with was a natural reaction. So, you had a meeting with Mary's grandfather like we have now? Of course, and he told me the same thing that I'm going to tell you right now, Henry, and you need to hear it. I put my glass on the table and turned my full attention to it. He continued, I understand that this tradition, as they call it, is unorthodox, but the women in this family are exceptionally and fiercely devoted to their man, Henry. I guarantee that you will never have any reason to believe that Mary will cheat on you or even put herself in a position in which it may seem she would rather die than embarrass you or make you doubt her love and loyalty. With the obvious exception of your future son-in-law, of course. I believe in it. That's one of the things that made me fall in love with Mary in the first place. Your marriage will be the one that all men strive for. I know I'm talking about my daughter's son, but for the rest of your life, she'll be the perfect lady in public but the notorious girl in the bedroom. I felt myself blushing when he talked about his own daughter like that, and the smile that appeared on his lips told me that he had noticed. He continued, she won't deny you anything in the bedroom. Do you think the last couple of years have been good? You haven't seen anything yet. But no other man would even look at her, let alone reach out to her, knowing what I know now. Even considering what's going to happen on Friday night, I can tell you with absolute certainty that it was worth it. and I promise you that Frank would have told you the same thing. I love Millie more every day, and I will do anything for her. I would have dropped dead at that second if that was what she wanted. That's how much she means to me. And on Friday night, if you make what I think is the right decision and move forward to marrying Mary with Millie in your bed, don't hold back. Enjoy it. It was all so much to take in. It seemed unthinkable to talk so casually to a man about me getting his wife into bed. So you and Grandma Agnes. I couldn't put into words what I wanted to say, but he seemed to know what I was asking. It was just incredible, Henry. Of course, times have changed a lot. You and Mary have a lot more experience than Millie and I had when we were a week away from our wedding. Agnes wasn't just a pleasure to talk to, but she taught me a lot about how to please a woman, and Millie often thanked her mother for that. But everyone knows about it. Isn't it strange? Actually, it's just the opposite, Henry. Since everyone knows about it, there is no secret to keep. It's just something that happens, and everyone accepts it as a normal phenomenon. So no one's even talking about it. I wouldn't say that, it just doesn't really matter. You'll probably be asked how it went, if you guys got close, and the like. It can pop up in casual conversation over the years, just like any other event in your life. But it's not like people are going to come up to you and say, "Man, I can't believe you touched Millie. Was she hot? What about you and Agnes? Were there any oddities with you after that?" I'm also worried about my relationship with Millie. Not at all. In fact, it gave us something very intimate and personal to share. It connected us together, and as a result, connected me to the family as a whole. I know it's unusual, but the results are exactly like that. We finished our drinks, and I thanked Joe for his time. He easily dismissed my concerns about what my relationship with Mary's family would be like if I went through with it. It seemed like it was just a part of family life and was treated no differently than if Millie and I had spent the evening bowling together. It seemed very strange to me, so I had only one problem left. Agreeing to it meant doing it with the knowledge that one day Mary would do it with another man, provided that she and I, of course, would have a daughter. I am familiar with 5 generations of Mary's family, and during this time exactly 0 sons were born, not a single one. This seems strange since presumably it is the male contribution to the fertilization process that determines the sex of the child. With all these sons-in-law joining the family, one would think that some sons would be born. But none of them were, and I had no illusions about changing this invincible trait. Therefore, in my opinion, I would have entered into a marriage that, as I knew in advance, would contain an act of adultery, at least by its strictest definition. But Joe was adamant that his marriage to Millie was worth it, even considering what was about to happen. If this situation had been presented to me as an outsider, I would have told the guy to run. You already know that she's going to cheat on you. But not only did I not run away, I was almost sure that I would do it. The week crept on, and I was practically useless at work unless someone literally grabbed me and got my attention. Everyone knew that I was getting married on Saturday, so it was written off as nerves, and everyone was very supportive of me. I was grateful for this, as it allowed me to focus on the real reason for my distraction. I'm usually very confident, but I found that I couldn't tap the number on my phone, and by that time, it was already Thursday afternoon. A decision must be made, and it will be made soon. I still had trouble thinking about Mary doing this with another man. Even 20-odd years in the future, several times I decided to go for it, only for this image to flash in my head, and I hesitated again. I haven't heard from Mary or her family since I talked to Joe. True to their word, they left me alone to make this decision, which was probably the most important one I've ever made. They didn't put any pressure on me, anyway, which is what I really expected. They explained it to me so that I could understand, and then everything depended on me. I was wondering what Mary was going through. Did I somehow hurt our relationship by taking so long to make a decision? Would Mary really think that I didn't love her as much as I did, since I didn't agree to it more readily? Of course, I hoped that this was not the case, that she would understand the inner struggle that I was experiencing. That remains to be seen. On the way home, I stopped, picked up something to take away, and decided to make a decision and make a phone call. I turned it all over in my head, but in the end, it all came down to one question: was I better off with Mary or without her, given what was going to happen in 20 years? After that, the decision was easy to make, and I made it. I dialed Joe and Millie's home number. Mary answered, obviously seeing the caller's number because she knew it was me. "Hi, honey. "We've been waiting for your call." Her voice wasn't as confident as usual, so she was clearly worried about what decision I had made. "Hi, Mary." I paused just for a moment for effect. "May I speak to your mother, please?" The smile on her face was clear, even on the phone. "Of course you can, baby." Millie knocked on the door at exactly 6:30 p.m. It was decided that she would come to my house, and from there, the evening would begin. I felt it would be awkward enough if I had to pick her up where Joe and Mary were, let alone pick her up in the morning. "Hi Mrs. I mean it, and Henry, ma'am. Since you're going to be inside me for the rest of the night, let's call each other by our first names, okay?" "Yes, ma'am, Millie." "Can I come in now?" "Oh, of course." I backed away from the door, feeling pretty stupid. I haven't been this nervous since, well, never before. Suddenly, I was even worried about my ability to perform when the time came. "Henry, I know this is a little weird, but I'm just a woman like everyone else." "Millie, I appreciate your desire to calm me down, but I promise you are not just a woman like any other, at least not for me. But I'll try to think of you that way. Do you think a drink will calm your nerves?" I probably shouldn't be more nervous than I am right now. We both laughed, and it seemed to ease the tension. I took Millie's bag, carried it into the bedroom, and put it on Mary's dressing table. Then we went to dinner. We ate at a small Mexican restaurant, taking a booth in the corner to talk. "Henry, let's talk about what's going to happen later." "By later, you mean when we do that?" "Yes, exactly." I was a little stunned by how openly she and the whole family talked about it, no euphemisms, no polite words, just "that's what it is." I grew up in a family where talking about it was like doing it on the living room floor in front of the parish priest, it just wasn't done. And to be honest, I like this new method much more. You've never had to worry about saying the wrong thing, Henry. When we get into bed, I want to make it clear exactly what I expect, and you should do the same. I don't want any confusion to arise. "All right, Millie. I think it would be more convenient for me if you started." "Of course. The important thing is that I don't want you to hold back in any way. I don't want you to feel like you need to stop and think, is this what I should do with Mary's mom? If you want to do something to me, just do it." "Like what?" "Yes, Henry. Anything. I am a woman who loves beds of all kinds. I plan to please you and expect you to do the same. Mary told me that you're pretty good at it, so I hope to be impressed. This has never been Joe's special skill. I've tried myself many times, so I won't have a problem taking you after you do this to me, or kissing you after you get down on me. And, of course, what always seems to be the main thing, I absolutely expect you to do it from another entrance. I really like it. In fact, I was the one who convinced Mary to try it with you, and you know how much she likes it. In short, I'm open to absolutely anything, so just do it." I was stunned by the speech she had just given me, and the smile on her face suggested that this was exactly what she wanted. "See, then we'll go and give our beautiful daughter to the man of her dreams, and then our lives will continue as they have for the man. Our lives will continue as they have for them last 24 years as a devoted couple who love each other very much. Nothing has ever threatened this and never will." As all this penetrated my psyche, one thought kept coming to my mind: I didn't want to live without Mary. But if that was the price, would I be able to live with it? At that moment, I decided what I would do. I looked up and met Millie's gaze. "Millie, I think the time for talking is over. It's time for me to take you back to my apartment and do the thorough process you expect. Now you're talking like a man, darling." I took care of the check, and we returned to my house. Anticipation gripped me all the way home, and I was looking forward to it. We decided to take a shower beforehand, probably only the first of several showers we would take, and I admired her body as she undressed, noting her with interest. "Enjoying the view, Henry?" "Very much, Millie. Very much indeed. You are an incredibly beautiful woman. Mary told me that you prefer things to be smooth, so I did it just for you. Joe's preferences lie in a different direction." I smiled at her as she put her hands on her hips and introduced her body to me. She looked good for a woman of any age, but especially for a 44-year-old woman. "Millie, let's make a deal." She looked at me with interest. "I love Mary very much, and I know how much you love Joe. I will do my best to put aside my inhibitions and make love to you the way you want and deserve. But let's do it one last time when we mention their names before tomorrow. A deal?" She laughed and said, "Agreed." The details of that night will forever remain known only to Millie and me. I had a little experience before I met Mary, but this was the first time I was with a mature woman, and it was definitely different. Millie didn't have that kind of energy, nor was she flexible like Mary, but she had some talents that needed to be tested at least once in her life. We got some sleep, but not much. I decided that if I was going to do this, then I was going to give everything I had. I hoped Millie wasn't lying when she told me how wonderful it was. Of course, I thought so, although it did not have the love that Mary and I have for each other. We did all the things Millie talked about and a few things she didn't talk about. We christened every room in our small apartment, and I think we were both a little disappointed when it came time for her to get ready to return to her husband. It was just wonderful, Henry. I haven't had this experience in years, and I will always cherish the time we spent together tonight. I will remember this with love forever. My daughter is a happy woman, and your husband, Millie, is very lucky. I will also remember this evening forever. I had my doubts about this tradition of yours, but I can't deny that it's great. All these generations can't be wrong. I'm going to leave now and see you at the wedding, my Taha. Devoured miles on the way east. It was approaching noon, and I finally turned on my phone, which had been turned off since morning. God, 38 calls and 54 texts from Mary, a bunch of the same from Millie, and my failed cockled father-in-law Joe, of course. I knew that my parents were not at church, and I didn't need to call them. I told them about my plans in the morning, and they warmly supported me. Obviously, Mary got the message that my phone was online because her phone call rang at the same minute. My love, where are you? The priest, all our relatives, and my father await me at the altar, yet you are absent. Mary, do you truly believe I desire to wed someone I foresee will betray me? Given the disrespect you've shown, I'll make it clear, I no longer wish to see or hear from you. Henry, why such a reaction? It's a customary practice, something my mother and I felt obliged to follow, she uttered amidst tears. Are there other customs in your family you've yet to disclose? Perhaps I'll need to repeat this with your grandmother after our first daughter's birth. She's expected to assist in raising your great-granddaughter. So, I'm not part of your family, and your customs don't concern me. Besides, your mother was so remarkable that I can't deny her the chance to do it again with your future husband. You wouldn't want to deny her that opportunity, would you? I switched off the phone and drove off. My future lay ahead, and I hoped to find a woman who wouldn't eagerly involve herself with future sons-in-law, potentially making me a cuckold twice over.